Patients were given false diagnoses. One woman was told she had miscarried when she was pregnant. Another was diagnosed with cancer, but she didn't have it. When pressure and threats replace answer to questions, that's a signal. Don't be afraid to appear skeptical, because skeptics are the only ones who don't lose money. The top 21st century scams. How smart people lost billions. They had Harvard degrees, Manhattan offices, Forbes covers, and billions of other people's money. And ultimately, they all had one thing in common. They were scammers. Today, we'll examine the biggest financial scams of the 21st century. We won't just list them. We'll break down the mechanics. How exactly did they work? Why smart people fell for them? And most importantly, what pattern is repeated in each one of them? Because if you understand this pattern, no scams will ever catch you again. Stay until the end. And at the end, there is a 5-question checklist that will help you distinguish a real investment instrument from a scam in 2 minutes. Bernie Madoff, 64.8 billion and 150 years in prison. Let's start with the king. Bernie Madoff, former chairman of Nasdaq, one of the most respected financiers in Wall Street. People lined up to give him money. Literally, his fund didn't accept just anyone. He pretended to handpick clients. This created the illusion of elitism and further fueled the desire to get in. The mechanics were simple. No real investments. New clients' money went to pay off old ones. A classic Ponzi scheme. And Madoff simply perfected it. A consistent return of 10-12% per year every year in any market, even in 2008 when everything was collapsing. This is precisely what should have raised alarm bells, but it didn't. The scheme operated for over 17 years. It collapsed in 2008 when clients began withdrawing their money en masse during the crisis, and it turned out there was nothing left to withdraw. Losses totaled 64.8 billion. The victims included charities, retirees, Hollywood stars, and major European banks. Victims spanned 136 countries. It wasn't regulators who exposed him, his own sons did. In December 2008, Madoff confessed to his family their sons turned him in the sack that the same night. 150 years in prison, he died behind bars in 2021 at the age of 82. A red flag everyone ignored. Consistent returns in any markets are physically impossible. If the results are the same whether the market is up or down, that's not genuine, that's a lie. Enron, America's most innovative company. The next scam is on a different scale. It's not a one person, it's an entire corporation. Enron, Houston, Texas, energy giant. For 6 years in a row, from 1995 to 2000, Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company. In August 2000, shares were worth $19.75. A year later, less than $1. What happened? Accounting fraud. On such a scale that it changed US law. Enron hid billions of dollars in losses in subsidiaries, specifically created of balance sheet entities. Simultaneously, it recorded future profits as current revenue. A contract is signed, revenue is already in the report. A plant hasn't even been built, profits are already calculated. Shareholders lost 74 billion. 4,000 employees lost their jobs. The pension savings of thousands of people evaporated. The auditing firm Arthur Andersen, one of the 5 largest in the world, ceased to exist because it helped conceal the truth. CEO Jeff Skilling received 24 years in prison. Founder Kenneth Lay died before sentencing. The main lesson of Enron isn't about prison. The main lesson is about auditing. Enron was audited by the same company that helped him defraud. An external audit turned out to be internal complicity. Red flag when the auditor and the company are one team. Theranos, 9 billion on technology that never existed. 2014, Silicon Valley, a 30-year-old woman on the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Time magazines simultaneously. Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, the youngest female billionaire in US history, according to Forbes. The company's valuation is 9 billion. Investors contributed more than 700 million. The board of directors included former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis, and former Secretary of State George Shultz. Media mogul Rupert Murdoch personally invested 125 millions. The idea was revolutionary. Theranos claimed that with a single finger prick, a drop of blood, you could perform 240 medical tests. No needles, no lab, cheap and fast. But there was one problem. The technology didn't work, not at all. The Edison device could only perform one of the claimed 240 tests. Theranos performed all other tests on standard Siemens equipment and hid it from everyone. Patients were given false diagnoses. One woman was told she had miscarried when she was pregnant. Another was diagnosed with cancer, but she didn't have it. Wall Street Journal journalist John Carreiro exposed it all in 2015. Holmes was sentenced in 2022 to 11 years in prison. Red flag. Big names on the board of directors are not a guarantee of technology. Kissinger didn't vet Edison. Mattis didn't vet the tests. They trusted each other's reputation. The chain of trust is the same as Madoff's. FTX, Bernie Madoff cryptos. November 2022. Cryptocurrency market, one of the largest exchanges in the world, collapsed in 10 days. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. Age at the time of the crash, 30 years. Peak value, 26 billion. FTX was valued at 32 billion. Investors invested nearly 2 billion. Super Bowl commercial. Miami Arena name. Partnerships with NBA, Formula One, and MLB. This man testified before the US Congress as an expert on crypto regulation. Behind the scenes, FTX client funds were secretly transferred to an affiliated hedge fund, Alameda Research, without their consent. When Alameda's leaked balance sheet came out in November 2022, the chaos began. Clients attempted to withdraw 6 billion in a single day. FTX was unable to pay. November 11, 2022. Bankruptcy. 10 billion in client funds disappeared. Sentence: 25 years in prison, 11 billion forfeited. But there is a twist many didn't expect. In October 2024, the bankruptcy court approved the payment plan. FTX has collected between 14.7 billion and 16.5 billion in assets, including stakes in Anthropic and Robinhood, and 98% of creditors will receive 119% of their claims in dollar terms at November 2022 prices. Sounds like a happy ending, but there is a catch. Bitcoin has risen 260% since November 2022. People will get dollars and lose all the crypto upside they would have had if the money hadn't been stolen. Red flag. A charismatic founder actively cultivates a public image of a good man while being extremely opaque about how his business operates. WorldCom, the scam that changed the law. 1 year after Enron, 2002, WorldCom, telecommunications giant. At its peak, its market capitalization was 175 billion, the second largest internet provider in the US, and a fraud that was technically obscenely simple. Expenses that should have reduced profits were recorded as a capital investments. No complex derivatives, no exotic schemes, a few lines of Excel paper that turned a real loss into a fictitious profit quarter after quarter. Assets inflated by 11 billion. Investors lost 180 billions. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. It wasn't the SEC or an external auditor who exposed the fraud. It was the company's internal auditor, Cynthia Cooper, who worked nights to avoid being caught by management. CEO Bernie Ebbers received 25 years in prison. But something more important. Enron and WorldCom jointly launched the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002. For the first time in history, top managers became personally responsible for the accuracy of financial statements. Before, a CEO could say, "I didn't know," after he couldn't. Scams changed the rules, sometimes for the better, but always too late. What all these scams have in common? Plus, Wirecard as a bonus. 5 different stories, 5 different industries, the same mechanics. And before we examine the pattern, here's a bonus case that perfectly illustrates it. Wirecard, a German payment processing company, a member of the prestigious TX 30 index, a competitor to Visa and MasterCard according to its own press releases. In June 2020, the auditors demanded confirmation of 1.9 billion in accounts. It turned out the money didn't exist. It was just a fragment of the imagination. The CEO was arrested. The CEO fled presumably to Russia and is still wanted. What makes this case special? The Financial Times published investigations into Wirecard's problems for several years in a row. The company sued the newspaper. German financial regulators BaFin investigated not Wirecard but FT journalists. When the truth came out, it turned out the regulator was protecting the scammers. Now, the pattern is the same in all 6 stories. First, authority as a substitute for transparency. Madoff is the chairman of Nasdaq. Holmes is a board of directors made up of generals. Bankman-Fried is Davos and Congress. Wirecard is the DAX 30. Status was used to disable critical thinking. Second, the promise of the impossible. Stable returns in any market. Analysis of a drop of blood. Profits that never fall. If the result sounds too good to be true, it isn't. Third, an attack on skeptics. Madoff implied that skeptics simply don't understand his strategy. Tirana sued its employees. Wirecard sued the FT. When pressure and threats replace answer to questions, that's a signal. Fourth, complexity as a shield. None of these scams honestly explain how exactly money is made. The more obscure the mechanics, the more reasons to dig deeper. Fifth, urgency and FOMO. In each case, there was a feeling that I had to get in right now. Madoff wouldn't accept everyone. The queue created a shortage. FTX isn't a bull market, everyone is getting rich. The pressure of time shoots down rational thinking. Checklist: how to distinguish the real from a scam. Remember what I mentioned at the beginning of the checklist? Let's break it down. Okay, 5 questions. Ask them about any investment instrument, especially if it sounds attractive. And right now, let's look at them using a real example, the 8lens platform. Let's see how it answers each one. First, Where does the income come from? A real business takes out the loan and pays interest for the use of capital. The specific business, the specific project, and the specific rate. Everything is visible in each project's profile. Second, can it be independently verified? Yes, Maclear AG in Switzerland legally register each collateral. Smart contracts have passed public audits by Certic and Cyberscope. Everything is externally verifiable. Third, what about withdrawals? The terms are specified in advance. There is a buyback guarantee. If the borrower is late with a payment for more than 60 days, the platform partner buys the debt and returns 100% of the principal to the investor. Fourth, who is responsible? Alpha Systems LLC as the operating entity and the Maclear AG as the collateral agent. Specific legal entities with addresses and regulatory status. Fifth, is the yield explained? Yes, 19 to 25% per annum is the market rate for a loan to a small business that the bank won't lend due to bureaucracy, not magic. It's a logic. And one documented fact. In the entire history of the platform, there has been one default, Vibra deal in Italy. Every investor received a 100% refund of the principal, not a promise. It's a documented case. All 5 questions are answered. This is what the real tool looks like. Link in the description. Final, Nada, Inron, Holmes, Bankman-Fried, WorldCom, Wirecard. Different faces, different stories, one result. Scams don't disappear. They become more complex, more convincing, more technologically advanced. With each new cycle, new names, new packaging, but the same underlying mechanics. There is only one difference. Ask the right questions. Don't trust authority. Check the mechanics. Don't be afraid to appear skeptical because skeptics are the only ones who don't lose money. Scams exist where there is no verification. Invest only where you don't have to believe, where you can verify. Here we balance hot events, interesting news, and market opportunities. All about psychology and financial literacy. At 8 Lands, we believe that a successful investor must above all have a broad outlook. Stay with us until next time.